What? Greetings, Saps! 'Tis I, Wario! And today, I'm going to refresh your memory on a game all about me!
Wow!
Oh, hey! Don't know what the heck that was. Greetings, my fellow knights. Besides Sir Delonius. Don't worry about Wario. He's just excited for today's game review. The GameCube era. A fantastical time when Nintendo put out so many new and weird titles that a ton of games from this time frame have gained quite the cult following. And for good reason. So many games I grew up with from around this time period are fetching amazing. Heck, Luigi's Mansion wasn't even supposed to be a full game at first. Originally it was just meant to be nothing more than a tech demo just to show off the GameCube's power. And boy am I glad Nintendo released it as a full game. I don't know where it'd be today without it. Sup guys, and Luigi Nightmare. Today I'm going to talk about my favorite GameCube game of all time, Mansion. A game about mansions and nothing else. I've got no friends. Of course, during this time, there was quite a few other GameCube games that I'd so wish Nintendo would just try again. Paper Mario 1000, your door. Wheeze. But today we're not talking about that masterpiece. In today's game review, I'm talking about Wario World for the Nintendo GameCube, released everywhere except Japan in 2003 and released in Japan in 2004. For those wondering why Japan got the game late this time compared to getting games early most of the time, because the developer's treasure was given a longer development time specifically for the Japanese release. So with the 11 extra months they were given, they fixed some bugs and exploits and beefed up the final boss battle. Meaning they made the final boss more fun and actually a boss battle. We'll get to that in a few, but let's dive in. Of course, I'm going to talk about the developer's treasure, the game's story, the gameplay, the soundtrack, and other fun things I can find about the game. I'll also mention a few differences I can spot between the US and Japanese releases. So back when I was little, I used to think that Nintendo just made everything with their name on it. Boy, was I wrong. After figuring out at around 14-ish, oh, pathetic, right? That's when I finally realized that Nintendo does make some things themselves, but obviously they hand out their IPs to other developers sometimes too. And that's when our pal Treasure comes in. The developers behind Gunstar Heroes, McDonald's Treasureland Adventure, Mischief Makers, Sin and Punishment, and many others developed Wario World. Do you think it's funny that Treasure likes making games that sometimes just happen to be about treasure-related stuff? Yeah, me too. I don't know for sure, but from what I can tell, Treasure is actually still around. It's just their last game that they developed was called Geist Crusher God in 2014, and it was developed for the 3DS. I mean, at least their Twitter's still active, so I don't know. When starting the game, you're introduced to this title screen.
Welcome to Wario World!
Thanks, Wario. This title screen is already a great first impression. I like that I'm able to get a little look at Wario's castle. Pressing start, you got 4 books on pedestals in front of you. The green ones are datas, and the red one, of course, is just some settings you could change. So starting a data, you get a little story introduction. The story is that a long time ago, there was a cursed black jewel that could give the user whatever they wanted. I don't know why they called this thing black. This looks purple to me. Anyways, that's beside the point. So these woodland dwarf-looking creatures called Spritelings thought the jewel's power was too dangerous, so they took the jewel and hid it deep in the forest. After many, many years, the Spritelings forgot about ever hiding the jewel, and that's when Wario came along. He found it, hearing about the jewel's history, and gladly took it home.
Uh-oh, Wario! Looks like you're gonna get the old Uno reverse card! You stole the black jewel, and now the black jewel's gonna take your castle and riches!
So Wario in his castle is just sitting and laughing for some reason. And that's when the black jewel downstairs awakens, saying that they'll turn all of Wario's treasure into monsters. This is when Wario's castle comes crashing down, and his adventure begins. Well, hey, I mean, that's one way to transition. Right off the bat, this game controls pretty dang well. Use the control stick to move, A to jump, B to punch enemies or pick up unconscious enemies, hold down B or press the right trigger to dash, use the C stick for moving the camera, Z and the left trigger to suck in coins, A plus right trigger to ground pound, and right trigger plus A to do a spin dash. By the way, the C stick only sort of controls the camera. It's not full camera movement. So this is the hub world. This is where you select levels or go look at the keys or microgames you've unlocked. We'll talk about the microgame thing later. So there's 4 worlds and a treasure chest section that will be important later. We have a grassy world, a spooky world, a snowy world, and a desert type world. And they're all named Excitement Central, Spooktastic World, Thrillsville, and Sparkle Land respectively. Am I the only one who thought of the amusement park simulator called Thrillville after hearing the name of World 3? Just me? Okay. Playing through the game, it feels mostly like a beat 'em up with a platformer smooshed into one, and I really like it. I also don't know what it is, but Wario, despite being a fat guy, is surprisingly floaty when jumping from platform to platform. I mean, it's not bad by any means, it's just a little odd. Especially since you'd suspect him to not jump as high and fall slightly quicker. During the gameplay, there are different types of enemies that tend to get some sort of reskin from level to level. We got these baby enemies that take a single punch to kill, and don't really hurt you. But in later levels they do. There's these bigger guys that look similar to the baby ones, but they take 3 hits instead of 1. They also don't immediately die. You have to press B to pick them up and either toss them, pile drive them, or spin them to death.
To spin.
The spinning is also useful for getting rid of other enemies, so there's that. There's many others, and they take around the same amount of hits as the bigger guys. Different enemies have different weaknesses though, and I really like it.
Throughout the game, there's also a decent amount of collectibles. And surprisingly, this game's collectibles don't feel pointless like other platformers do. Well, unless you count the treasure collectibles that require a separate button to be pushed. Yeah, those are pretty much redundant. All it does is just unlock a few WarioWare microgames to download to a physical Game Boy Advance with a GBA link cable. So if you're gonna pick this game up, I'd say unless you want to 100% it, don't worry about the treasure collectibles.
So let's talk about the collectibles for a second while we're on that topic. There's coins that you can get for beating up enemies or finding in some chests that you can punch open. The coins only really serve 2 purposes. The first one being to revive Wario if he dies during a level or a boss fight. And the second being to buy a garlic to heal Wario if he's low on health. If Wario has 0 coins and he dies, you have to restart the entire level or boss fight from the very beginning. So there's these red crystals that are required to enter the level's boss fight. They range from needing 4 to 6 depending on the level you're playing. Boss screen even lets you know how much you need for that specific level, and it's pretty useful. There's also pieces of a Wario statue in each level. There's 8 pieces per level, and if you collect all pieces, you earn an extra half a heart. There's also the Spritlings themselves as some sort of collectibles. There's 8 of them in each level, and they're inside of these brick-type cages that you just punch to break them out. Once broken out, they give you helpful tips for the level or the upcoming boss. You also get the best ending for getting them, so I'd say these guys are the most important in my opinion. Lastly, of course, there's the collectible treasures. They range from a bunch of different antique-type items to even Nintendo consoles. You have to find these buttons across the level to activate them, and then go find the treasure to collect it.
Yeah, these are the only items I just feel aren't super important to get while playing. They're mainly used for connecting a Game Boy Advance to the GameCube to download some microgame demos of WarioWare Inc. for the Game Boy Advance. Yep, that's it. That's its purpose. I sadly wasn't able to test out the microgame thing because I don't have an original Game Boy Advance. I do have a link cable, but I only have a GBA SP, which doesn't work with it. So I guess if someone can get an original Game Boy Advance or something, feel free to test it out. Let me know if it works, if you can even get your hands on a cable, GameCube, and a copy of Wario World.
I'd like to talk about the level design for a few. To be honest, I feel like Treasure nailed it in this department. It's difficult, don't get me wrong, but not too frustrating to play through, and I'm absolutely for that. Believe me, I like a challenge, but not to sit there not wanting to play because I can't get past a certain part. I'm looking at you, Sarge's Heroes. Every level feels unique and fun to play through. Well, I mean except Shivering Mountains if you're trying to get all the Wario statue pieces.
I want to know whose idea it was to stick 2 of the statue pieces on the ice slide part. You have to restart the level over and over just to get a chance at getting them. And it's not even guaranteed. I hated trying to get those pieces from Shivering Mountains because the statue piece placement sucks in that level.
Now I think it's time to talk about the minigames. Or should I say, underground puzzles. I don't know what these are called. So there are these trap doors that you find throughout each level, and each leads to a puzzle that gives you items ranging from a red crystal, a statue piece, a Spritling, a chest of coins, a chest with garlic, or a combination of the 5. To enter, Wario just needs to do a simple ground pound and voila! There he is. Honestly, some of the trapdoor puzzles range from stupidly easy to easy but getting hurt a lot. Again, doing these 95% of the time are required because this is where most of the red crystals are located. There's also a different type of trapdoor that's made of metal. You can't just do a ground pound through these. You need to grab an enemy or a statue and pile drive them through the door in order to enter.
Was I the only one frustrated that it took Alpharad until World 3 to figure out how to enter the doors during their Let's Play of this game recently? I mean, no hate towards them. Honest. But it's kind of jarring to me, especially since they were using the pile drive everywhere else. I don't know, I just thought I'd bring that up.
Anywho, these trapdoors are not puzzles like the other ones. These are platforming sections that seem to remind literally everyone of the non-flood sections in Super Mario Sunshine. Yes, I know they're similar. You can stop telling me now. These are more frustrating in my opinion than the puzzles, but then again, not too frustrating, making me want to quit. Minus the final one on the final level. But it's the final level, so it gets a pass. Another thing I wanted to mention is if you fall off a cliff in the game, Wario doesn't immediately die. He's sent to what's called Unithorn's lair. By gosh, is this part gimmicky. I thought it was kind of cool at first, but holy crap does it get annoying fast. There's these ghost/rhino looking thing called Unithorns. There's a bunch of crates that Wario needs to break to look for a spring to get out of there. Other crates just contain bombs. The thing is, the spring is always in a random spot, and the later the level is, the further apart the platforms in this area are. And the water stuff you're looking at? Yeah, that makes Wario lose more money the longer he touches it. And to make matters worse, the Unithorns like to push, shove, and shake Wario to make him lose even more coins, and I kinda hate this. But it's whatever. The game's kind of forgiving in the coins department as there's a lot to go around.
Lastly, I wanted to talk about the bosses in this game. Some are pretty cool and unique, like this one. Some are downright creepy for no reason, like this one. And then some are,
ooh, a sandworm with giant pincers. Or, ooh, a weird looking spider wearing boots. I mean, it's fine to have these dud bosses, but Treasure was literally created with many of the other bosses. Why not these guys? I don't know, though, that's just my opinion. But I'd say overall the bosses are pretty top notch in this game and are an absolute blast to fight. My personal favorite boss is Captain Skull in World 4. A freaking skeleton pirate boss. I love it. Besides that, he's an overall difficult boss, but there is a fun exploit for speedrunning if you're into that sort of thing, where you can kill him quickly by just constantly tossing barrels from the side of the boat at him.
I did want to mention some of the differences between the Japanese and American releases while I'm at it. I can only really find two, other than just straight up bug fixes.
The first being this ledge and Shivering Mountains can no longer be grabbed onto in the Japanese release. This was mainly to prevent skipping a whole section to the level, which you can still grab onto in the US version. I'm about to mention a spoiler of the game's ending, so skip to this timestamp if you'd like to eventually play this game yourself, if you haven't already. The second difference being, of course, the final boss has a second phase in the Japan version, while the US version is just stuck with this.
I honestly feel like we got duped out of a better version of a game here. Nintendo just wanted to get the game out for a holiday release here, but Japan waited and ended up getting the best version of the game. And to add insult to injury, the second phase of the final boss got its own new music too, and it's catchy as frick! Well, not technically new. They just reused the E3 trailer music for the battle. But hey, it's still catchy.
After defeating the Black Jewel, a spriteling talks to Wario, talking about how they'll try their best to rebuild his castle with what they got. Depending on how many spritelings you freed, this will either get you a literal tent, a forest fort, an okay looking castle, a better castle, a great castle, or Wario's full castle rebuilt.
Okay, nerds, you can come back now. So I'd like to talk about the soundtrack because, ooh, this is a good one.
Holy fish paste. This game's music is fetching awesome. It's so groovy sounding. It's so Wario. I feel like the music perfectly encapsulates the feel of the levels while staying true to the character's source material. Norio Hanzawa and Minako Hamano did a phenomenal job crafting the music, which, by the way, Hanzawa worked on the music for the Simpsons arcade game in 1991, and Hamano did the music for Super Metroid and Super Smash Bros. Brawl. I rate the soundtrack an overall 9.5 out of 10. It's so freaking memorable, and the music just straight up gets me in the mood.
So overall, what are my thoughts on Wario World? This game was a ton of fun to play and get back into. I honestly think it still holds up today. Not a particularly long game, but man, games don't have to be 30 plus hours to be good. My man Wario got a darn good 4-hour game and I love it. If you could somehow get your hands on a copy, especially with GameCube prices shooting up right now, I wholeheartedly recommend it. I rate this game an 8.5 out of 10 for the US version, and I rate a 9 out of 10 for the Japanese version, again, because it's the better version. So sadly, this was Wario's only time to shine in a 3D adventure, as this type of game was never done with Wario ever again. And I hope to be wrong someday. I'd honestly love to see a Wario World remaster on the Switch with
Extra goodies from the Japanese release.
I'd get that day one, I guarantee you. Anyways, that's all from me today. Thank you all so much for watching. I deeply appreciate it. If you're new around here, feel free to subscribe. I do a lot of retro game and relatively older game reviews here. And Luigi's Mansion is next on the list. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Slay your dragons.